So, hi, I'm Niclas. Welcome to Bar Deli TV. I'm sitting here at Matbaren, the food bar of the Grand Hotel in Stockholm. And with me, I have a very special interview guest today. We have Mr. Garrett Oliver from Brooklyn Brewery, who's here to do some interviews and has a very hectic schedule. I'm very thankful to get a few minutes of his time today. So welcome, Mr. Garrett Oliver.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's great to have a hectic schedule, actually. I mean, it's as much as I would like to have a little bit more time to see Stockholm, it's nice also that people are so interested in what's going on. So that's cool.
And you've been here times before?
I have been here many times before. Usually the weather is is a little bit brighter than it is right today,
really?
But it's pretty cold.
Yes, but inside here it's warm, and to get us even warmer, we could start with a few questions.
Sure.
So this will be a very quick interview. We won't have time to get into a lot of depth as I sure would wish to. But I have some questions to ask Mr. Oliver here. And the first one is, me as a beer beginner, I'm very curious about how did your beginning in beer interest take form? How did it come that you're...
When I got out of school, you know, my degree is in broadcasting and film, and I realized that qualified me to drive any color cab I want to. You know, so I said, okay, let me move to England where my parents can't see me anymore, and I was stage managing rock bands. But at the same time, I was going to the pub, and I started drinking the traditional British beer, which is the stuff that you see, you know, on the hand pump, being pumped into the glass. And it's served warmer. It doesn't have the same level of carbonation, but it's a very old form of beer. And it had just tons of flavor. And the beer that I was used to, this is the early 80s, you know, we had Budweiser, Miller, Coors, and these beers all tasted, to me, pretty much like water. And so, you know, I drank beer when I was in college, but I didn't like it. Nobody really liked beer. They didn't love beer.
Yeah.
It was just something that you drank because it was there. And I suddenly started to see beer as something which could be wonderful. And then I went traveling around Europe. I went to Belgium, I went to Germany, I went to Czechoslovakia. And when I got back home in 1984, I just couldn't drink those American beers anymore, the American beers we had at the time. So I started making beer at home in order to have some beer.
Yeah.
It wasn't a matter of being interested in making beer. And it was really only through making it that I fell in love with it. I eventually became a professional brewer by apprenticing to an English brewmaster who was working in New York in the late 80s. So in 1989, I became his apprentice. And so now I've been making beer for 21 years professionally.
Yeah, so the history is longer than 25, 26 years.
Yeah, but what's really happened in the United States is a resurgence of a culture that we used to have. We used to have a great beer culture. We had 4,000 breweries, and they made every kind of beer you could imagine. But eventually what we ended up with is what we ended up with also in food, which is what I call the facsimile. It's a copy, you know, of something that was once real, but is now no longer the real thing. It happened to bread. Bread got made into a chemical sponge. Cheese got made into plastic. And your food became somewhat fake. And the same thing I feel happened to beer. They started making it out of all kinds of other ingredients. They started making it much more cheaply, quickly, and more importantly, to have no flavor at all. So remove all the flavor, then sell through huge amounts of advertising. And I think that this led to a place in American culture where we had such bland bread and bland cheese and bland beer. These very primal, wonderful things that should be at the table, the most real things in the world, made into something else. Now this is why we have the explosion of a craft beer culture once again.
I see. And from what I hear now, it seems like you would want to call craft beer the movement of that for real beer.
Exactly.
And the regular beer is actually fake beer.
Yeah, I mean, to me it sort of is, but I mean, I think more important even than that, it's industrial beer. You know, the same way that you have industrial bread and you have industrial food.
Yeah.
You know, are you going to eat things that are made in a factory, or are you going to eat food grown on a farm that has been minimally messed with, and that still has its flavors? And instead of trying to sell people through huge amounts of advertising, how about selling it to people because it tastes good?
I also hear something that I read about you, that you were in the slow food movement, and I guess that's the same line of thought.
Oh, absolutely. And so those things dovetailed very much with what we've always believed in. I was one of the founders for Slow Food USA, and these are part of the principles of the brewery and the way we go about things. But now you have 1,500 breweries in the United States and the most interesting beer culture in the world. And I think the most important thing to realize is that this is not a fad or a trend. It's a return to normality.
Yeah.
We're getting back to normal, and normal is actually very interesting. It's not industrial.
Speaking of interesting, because my beer interest is actually just now budding and awakening.
Congratulations, my friend.
Yes, thank you. It's a very exciting world.
You shall be saved.
Thank you. Thank you, Savior. I was going to ask you for a few tips for how can I enter this world with as good knowledge as possible, as for distinctions. How do I, as a beer beginner, find my favorite beer?
Okay. Well, I mean, there's a number of ways. There are some good websites out there. Of course, I have to recommend my book, The Brewmaster's Table.
Of course.
Which is about beer and also about food. But there are other good books out there that give you some idea of the backgrounds when it comes to the flavors. There are also some good websites, beeradvocate.com. I think here Rate Beer is very popular, though I don't know how much they have on there about different beer types. But I mean, you can split beer up into a number of different styles.
Yeah.
And it's not really like wine, because wine is more about region and grape, whereas beer, a style encompasses the flavor, the color, the history.
Yeah.
So if I say something is India Pale Ale, IPA, it's always going to be relatively pale, as in not brown or black.
Yeah.
It's going to have a lot of bitterness. It's going to have a lot of hop flavor and aroma. It's going to be relatively dry, never sweet. And you have a general idea of what the flavors will be.
Yeah.
So then you can taste a range of different India Pale Ales and say, okay, which one is my favorite? Or maybe that's not the style for you.
Yeah.
But I really think that there are a few different areas that are always worth looking at.
And is it okay to like everything?
It's okay to like everything. It's also perfectly okay to like some things and not other things. And to me, okay, at our brewery, every year we'll maybe make 15, 16 different beers. I'm the only one who has to love all of them. So if you, for example, taste out of these 15 beers, you taste them and you say, okay, I like 11 and those 4 are not for me. That's fine. There's no reason that all of us have to like everything.
Yeah.
You don't like every cheese, or at least I don't love every cheese. I love most cheeses, but the good ones. But it's that way with everything. So
Yeah.
I think that you can look at it similarly.
So